The Eltif 2 regulation is now in force in Europe, and at the end of 2023 we had also the Regulatory Technical Standards, or RTS, clarifying certain more technical aspects of the Eltif 2 regulation. In this video we have packed the latest regulatory intelligence on one of the aspects discussed in the RTS, which is the transfer matching, or the matching of the requests of transfer by existing investors in an Eltif. As a bonus, we will also discuss what could go wrong with the transfer matching and the advertising of transfer matching, because too much of a good thing is not always good. Let's dive in. The Eltif 2 regulation contained a mandate for ESMA to release RTS to provide that second level regulation required to specify fine details about the transfer matching. Hang on a second, I did mention RTS. Do you know what an RTS is and what it is for? The European Parliament deals with the main principles when issuing laws and regulation, and leaves to the European Commission to define the details that help with the implementation of these rules. When the details are highly technical in nature, in the drafting of the second level regulation, the detailed rules that we mentioned, supervisory authorities are involved, and they issued the second level regulation via so-called regulatory technical standards, or RTS. Class dismissed, let's go back to the video. One of the Achilles heels of the Eltif regulation, which drove in part also the second iteration of the regulation, and if you want to know more about the reasons for Eltif 2, we linked an article in the description of this video, was the fact that retail investors could and indeed did struggle conceptually with committing to a longer term type of investment opportunity. And this is why throughout the second iteration of Eltifs there are ways to ensure liquidity in this type of investment proposition, which is long-term in nature and so fits rather awkwardly with very frequent liquidity and liquidity windows, if you like. One of the ways to counteract this issue, this conceptual issue for retail investors, is seen in the introduction for the first time at European level of the so-called mechanism of transfer matching. This can be defined as a systematic and public matching of requests of existing investors of an Eltif to exit the investment and requests of new investors who want to enter that investment opportunity. For us to understand conceptually what a transfer matching is, it makes sense to compare it with the redemption. Redemption is a legal claim that an investor has over the assets of a fund, and once a redemption is presented as a claim, that the manager has to either disburse liquidity or divest existing underlying assets to meet the redemption request. Transfer matching is nothing like this, both from a legal perspective and from an operational perspective. From a legal perspective, it's an option that the manager can offer to their investors, and even when it is offered, all the conditions for the transfer matching to be completed have to materialize themselves. From an operational perspective, the existing investor is paid out, is bought out with the proceeds that are paid by the new investor, and so there is no liquidity event for the fund as such, no disbursement of liquidity, no divestment of underlying investment. And so this is the difference between a transfer matching and a redemption. One of the issues with transfer matching is the fact that there was and always the possibility for investors to transfer their participation or sell it privately to a third party, to another potential investor, if you like. The transfer matching is a public and systematic way to carry out what was already allowed in principle at a private level through a process that is governed by the manager and the administrator. From a regulatory perspective, the fact that the manager deals and the administrator as well with matching of the request to transfer or exit the fund and enter into the fund does not amount, as it is clarified in the RTS, to the operation of a multilateral trading facility, and no related authorization under MiFID is required to deal with the transfer matching. At the same time though, transfer matching is compared to marketing, because the manager will have to go and market, if you like, the opportunity of enter into an Eltif by buying out existing investors, and accordingly the Eltif will have to remain authorized for marketing in the domiciles where the transfer matching exercise will be carried out. In addition to this regulatory angles and nuisances, we also have a disclosure type of concern. The prospectus, the constitutional documents of an Eltif where the transfer matching is provided as an opportunity will have to detail the rules, the dynamic, the specific dates when it is possible, how to deal in situations that are not ideal, where there are no sufficient requests to enter into the funds or no request at all. We are thinking that for the retail Eltif, where a PRIPS kit is produced, here we could use the optionality that is offered by the RTS and the regulation also to add a link to a website of the Eltif manager or the Eltif itself, where information on the process to follow on the transfer matching can be available. In an ideal case scenario, which it's highly unlikely to occur at all times, we have a corresponding number of requests to exit the fund and to enter the fund. What happens if there are no requests to exit the fund in the same amount of the request to enter the fund, or the other way around, which is more likely? What if there are no requests to enter the fund at all? The rules designed by the manager should take care also of these scenarios, which in our view are highly likely, and define whether the transfer request can be carried over to the next window or will be cancelled if there are no sufficient requests to enter the Eltif. One of the other interesting elements is the benchmark to, in a way, quantify the value of the participation that is being transferred. For certain strategies, it makes sense to have it at NAV, and so the windows to be able to exercise this option of the transfer matching should coincide in a way to the moments where the fund is valued. There might be other cases where the NAV is not the most ideal benchmark, and there are different ways to price the participation, and so the dates for the transfer matching will be delinked in a way or divorced from the valuation dates of the Eltif, if you like. One of the other elements to consider in the transfer matching is that it is for the first time that the transfer matching is codified at European level. There were local examples, like in France or in Italy, where for specific types of closed-end funds there were rules on transfer matching. This is the first time with the Eltif 2 that the transfer matching is defined as a concept at European level. Accordingly, the approach that was adopted by the ESMA and the ESAS was just to define the principles, because that would have then allowed for the sufficient room for managers in different countries to adapt their practices and be able to offer transfer matching that makes sense and that is realistic. As mentioned at the beginning of the video, too much of a good thing can be bad, right? And one of the risks I personally see in the transfer matching is the way it is, or it could be, presented to retail investors, because as we know, the transfer matching could be purported to represent in essence an optional liquidity window, also in the phases of the ramping up of the Eltif when investments are bought. And the real risk here is that retail investors are led to believe that they can get out of the fund whenever they want, achieving that concept of that principle of liquidity, which isn't really the case of the transfer matching, because as we said, there are certain conditions that need to be met, including a sufficient demand to enter the Eltif. The abuse, the stretching of the transfer matching to present the possibility of at all times exiting an Eltif might be detrimental to the brand of the Eltif itself and to the flourishing of the market itself. So caution is required when deciding to introduce this mechanism, and disclosure should be crystal clear also in the marketing of what the transfer matching is and how it can help investors to exit a long-term investment opportunity. If you made it up to the stage of the video, I wanted to thank you, and I wanted to invite you to hit like to the video and subscribe to the channel. There is more to come on European regulation and European distribution. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned.